Imagine starting from nothing. No code, no project setup, just an idea. And by the end of this video, you'll have a fully functional terminal-based to-do list application built with FTXUI for the user interface, SQLite for persistence, and modern C++ development tools like CMake, VC Package, and Ninja. But here's the twist. I didn't do it alone. I had an AI assistant guiding me every step of the way. In this video, you'll see the entire journey, from brainstorming the project, structuring the code, choosing the right libraries, and refining the AI responses to get the best possible result. You'll see what works, what doesn't, and how AI actually fits into the modern C++ workflow. And here is the big question. Is AI just a helpful assistant, or is it coming for your job? Let's be real. AI tools are powerful, but they are just that, assistants. They won't replace deep understanding of C++ or solid problem-solving skills. If you want to stand a chance as a professional developer, you have to take the time and put in the effort to properly learn C++. That's exactly why we put together our latest C++ 23 Fundamentals course with projects and algorithms designed to get you up to speed with no fluff, just real-world C++ development. You can check it out if you are serious about mastering C++. But for now, let's just dive in and see how far AI can take us. In this video, I am going to show you how I use GitHub Copilot to do things or get it to help me do things faster. One thing I have to warn you about is that you shouldn't really use any of these AI agents to take over your thinking or your designing, because that's really what you are doing. You want to use them as helpers, but you don't want them to take over your work. This is something you should really do. But if you use them carefully, if you know the basics and you want to do things faster, you want them to help find bugs and everything, they become really helpful. But don't be taken over by them. I think the best way to say this is to not be lazy and let them take you over, because if you let them do that, you will be irrelevant and you won't have anything to offer. You want to use them to empower you. You don't want them to replace you. That's what I am saying here. So what I am going to do is set up a template project. One thing you can do is tell these AI agents to generate a project for you. I think I can even try to do that to show you what is going on. So I am going to go in a folder on my system. So let's come in my sandbox folder here, where I like to do things on my system. And I am going to create a project and name it CPP dev. This is not going to hurt. So let's say CPP_dev. This is going to be our folder here. And I am going to drag and drop this on top of Visual Studio Code. I have to say that I am using an insider version of Visual Studio Code. I am going to agree here. So it is an insider version, which is going to give me the latest features that they are working on in terms of GitHub Copilot. And another thing I should say is that I am using GitHub Copilot, but there are thousands of these agents and any one you choose is going to do. I just wanted to show you the basics of how I use these things in the context of a C++ project. If I come to help here in Visual Studio Code, you will see my version. So this is version 199.0 Insider. If you want to use regular Visual Studio Code, it is going to be blue at the top here. And another thing I should say is that you don't have to sign up to anything to get access to Visual Studio Code Insiders. You can go to Google or any search engine and type in Visual Studio Code Insider. You will get a link where you can download this. If you decide to go this way, it is really helpful to check for updates regularly to make sure that you have the latest changes. But now that I have a folder open, I can tell my agent to create a C++ project for me. How do I do that? I can come to the top here and open chat. And another thing I should warn you is that these things change a lot. You should really focus on understanding the basics here. Later on, you can come and find that this option has moved to another location. So keep that in mind here. So I am going to open chat. And if I do that, I will have a chat window open to the right. That's what we have here in this current version of Visual Studio Code Insiders. And I can ask my questions. I have the option to choose a model to use to do my coding for me. I can also do a bunch of things. For example, I can ask a question, I can get it to work in edit mode, or I can get it to work in agent mode. Agent mode is a mode in which it is going to be iterating and doing things on its own. You are basically giving up control and telling it to do things for you. In edit mode, it is going to do things step by step, but it is not going to take over completely. That's something you should know. In ask mode, you are basically asking questions about your project. So what I want to do here is to get it to create a project for me. I will go in agent mode because I want it to take over. You can read about this mode here, and I can tell it I want you to create a C++ project for me. Let's increase the size so that you can see what is happening here. CMake latest, or let's just say CMake, and a VC package and a CMake presets to control the build. I want the project to use C++17 and headers, and make it pull the format library for me. Assume that I have a VC package root environment variable pointing to the location where I have it installed. Okay, so and one thing you should notice is that to be able to use these things, you should have the knowledge. You see that I know that I want to use these tools. I want to use C++17, and I know that VC package is going to look for an environment variable named VC package root. You should know things before you get these agents to do things for you. If you don't know anything about C++, or if you don't even know how to use it properly, you won't get any value out of these things. They are going to be helpful if you know the basics to start with. So let's pass this command in, and you notice that I am using the Claude model because this is good for coding. We have a bunch of options we can choose here. We can use 3.7 or GPT-4o here. I am going to use 3.5 because it is good for my purposes here. And I am going to let this go. Let's see what comes up. We will wait for a while. And you see that it is going to think for a while. It is going to create a C++ project using CMake VC package. C++17 is going to be used. It is going to be using the FMT library. And it is going to create a plan. So let's look at this. First, I'll create the basic project structure, and essential files are setup, CMake configuration with C++17, CMake presets, VC package, a source structure, and the FMT library is going to be brought in here. You can see that now it wants to run a command on my system here. And one thing you should really keep in mind is to let it run when you know what it is really going to do. If you don't know what is happening, that's a risk that you are taking because you should be the one doing these things. It is really like you have a junior developer close to you helping you do things. And when they want to do something, they come to you, they say, I am going to do this. Is this proper? You give them the permission to do it, and then they do it. You should think of it that way. It is going to want to create a source folder, a build folder, and a GitHub folder. I am okay with this, so I am going to tell it to continue. And you see that because I am on Windows, it is going to fail because these commands are specific to Linux. It is going to notice that mkdir is going to fail because we're on Windows. It is going to try again with another syntax. So let's continue. This is going to fail again. And you notice that when I tell it to continue, it is going to be running this command on my terminal here, which is really cool. So yeah, it is going to keep failing, and you can see that this is really the benefit of using agent mode. It is going to take control, but when it needs permissions, it is going to ask you if it should do that. It is going to continue, and here it has failed again. At some point, it is going to realize that I am using PowerShell. I think that's the biggest problem we have here. But let's give this a moment. So great. I've created a basic directory structure. Now let me create the necessary configurations files for your project. First, I'll create things. You see that a project structure is being created and a Visual Studio Code is trying to build my project here. I am going to ignore it for now and let the Copilot agent finish what it is doing here. And I will see that this is going to work. So let's give this a moment. I'll create the main source files to implement the functionality, and you can really follow what it is doing here. Okay, so the project is here. Now it is going to want to run a VC package install, and this is not what I want. I want a VC package to run automatically when we configure this project. That's how I like to do things here. I don't want to run it manually like this. So I am going to go down and say, I don't want to run VC PKG manually. It should run automatically when I configure the CMake project. Set up things that way. Okay, and it is going to figure out a way to do that. And here you should see that you don't always have to accept the suggestions that it gives you. You can tailor them to exactly what you need. And another thing you should get out of this is that this is really not going to take over your work. You have to do the thinking. You have to do the strategic planning. You are in control. This agent is not in control. Keep that in mind here. I am going to pass this command and let's see what comes out. Okay, I understand you want VC package dependencies to be installed automatically during configuration. I'll modify the CMake list.txt file to do that. If you want, you can even open that file. If you click on it, it is going to show up here. And I think because of that, it is going to use the CMake toolchain file thing. Okay, so it is doing that. Let's give this a moment and you can see what it has done on the right here. Perfect. Now with these changes in place, VC package will automatically install the dependencies and it has given me my project here. Now that I have the project, I am going to hold off before I keep the changes that it has done here. Now the changes are in your project and you can try to build the project and see that it works well. But why not let this agent build and run the project to make sure that everything is okay. I am going to go down here and tell it that I want you to build and run the project to make sure that all is well. Okay, let's do that. And I am going to give it the command and it is going to try to run the CMake configuration command on my machine here. You see, it is trying to use the preset x64 debug because it should be in the preset file here. I haven't even looked at it, but let's trust it. So let's see what happens here. If it has a problem, it is going to fix it. You can see that this is really not completely automatic. It is not going to do the thinking for you. If you have problems, figure out what is going on, and this is going to help you out a bit. So you can see it is trying to pass the Visual Studio generator explicitly. So let's give it a chance and it is going to see, and it is going to have problems here. Let's continue. It is going to try to clean up and it can iterate until it figures out the proper way to build this project here. Now it is trying to use the PowerShell command to remove the build folder and everything. I am going to let it do that. And you see that the build folder is gone on the left here. This is something you can do. Okay, it has cleaned up the build directory. Now it is going to figure out the command to configure using CMake. Let's see what comes out. It just changed the preset file as well. Now it is going to be using that preset. Let's give it a chance. And now you see that this seems to have run and the build files have been written to this folder here. It is going to report that. So great, the CMake configuration was successful and a VC package automatically installed the FMT library as expected. I want to build the project using this build preset here. I am going to give it the permission to continue. Now the build completed successfully. Now let's run the executable to make sure everything works. It is going to try and run the executable and you see that we have hello world printed out here. This is really cool. We have generated a project and we didn't do much of it. It took over and did the things that we told it to do. Now that I have a project that I know runs, I am going to keep this. So now it is done and I can try to work with this project and do things that I want to do. I hope you see how this can help in making things easy in your C++ project. So let's look at the project. We have a greeting CPP file. We should have an include folder having the declarations for the function that we have here. We can go in greeting CPP and see what is going on. You see it is using the FMT library and the main CPP file is going to be including the greeting header, and using that to do things that we want to do here. You can really do all kinds of crazy things. Now that I have this, I can pass this through the compiler. So we can say CMake select configure preset because we want to be using presets here. We don't want to be using kits. So I can go to view command palette and say CMake select configure preset. So let's say CMake. So what is the CMake preset file doing here? This is going to be building using kits, but I want to use presets here. Let's see what we have in our presets file. So we should have Windows base, we have x64 debug. I am going to close this and open this again because sometimes Visual Studio Code needs to rethink what it is doing here. You see now that it is giving me the option to choose a configure preset. So I can go to view and say command palette and say CMake select configure preset. Now I am going to have this option here and I want to use the debug version of this. So let's give this a moment. It wants to install Docker. I don't want to do this now. Okay, now we have configured the project. If I hit F7, this is going to build the project as we have seen in our configuration, and I can run the application by hitting the run button here. Or I can set up a launch JSON file. You see that I can create it as we have done before, but that's not something I am going to concern myself with now. I just want you to see that you can generate a project. Now that we have a project we like, it is good to really use Git to keep track of things happening in your project. So I am going to go to the Git tab here and tell it that I want to initialize a Git repository here. So let's initialize it, and I am going to add everything we have in the project. But before I do this, I am going to, no, I don't want to delete these. But what I want to do is to add a git ignore file to this project here to make sure that everything is proper with Git. So I can tell my agent to generate a git ignore file. So let's do that. Generate a git ignore file that ignores the build folder and any non-necessary local files. You can do that. And I am going to give it the context of the project, and hitting this context button is going to give you different ways to give context to your project. I want it to look at my entire code base here, and let's give it a chance to run. It is going to take a moment, probably looking at everything in my project here. And what I really want is to ignore the build file. I could have done it myself, but why worry about that if I can get somebody to do that for me in a minute or two? So let's wait and see what comes out. You have to know that sometimes these agents can really mess up and give you things that don't make sense. So make sure you really know what you are doing and only accept things that you think make sense. In a minute, I am going to show you ways you can see things that have been added or removed. You see that this has been added. I can open this file and look at what is inside. I think it is good enough. I just want to ignore the build folder. You see, it is ignored, and it is going to ignore common things that C++ projects ignore in projects. I am going to keep this, and I am going to add it to my project first. So let's go. And now you see that a lot of things are gone because we want to keep track of things that are really specific to this project here. Now I like this, so I am going to add this to the staging area, and I am going to commit this. Locally, you don't have to push this even to GitHub or any remote repositories. So I am going to say initial project setup, and I can hit commit here. And it is in my Git history now. If I go to the source control tab, you see initial project setup, and you can look at the changes that were done in this setup here. So we added a git ignore file. We have a CMake list file, we have a CMake presets file, we have a greeting header, a greeting CPP file, a main CPP file, and a VC package.json file here. These are the changes that we did in this commit that we did in Git here. I can close everything, so let's close all. Okay, now that we have this, this is a basic C++ project. You can even store this somewhere and make it a basic C++ project template from which you will be doing other things here. You can learn a few things. You see, we have a source folder which contains our source files. We have an include folder which is going to be containing our implementation files. And this project is using C++ 17, as you see here. You have to find the third-party dependencies and link against them. You see, we are finding package, and then we are target linking the FMT library. And our executable is going to be named the same thing as the project name. And the project name is something you pass here. So this is our project name. And we can do all kinds of crazy things. We can build the project again. We can hit F7 to build using CMake. This is going to generate the executable, and you can run it. If you run it, you will see the output here. It is hello world. Everything seems to work. Now, on top of this, we wanted to do something more, and I wanted to push the limits and see what we can do with this agent that comes from GitHub Copilot here. So let's try and use FTXUI. If you don't know what FTXUI is, you can search here in your search engine. It is a library, a third-party library that you can bring into your own applications and get to build graphical user interfaces that run in the terminal. So it is going to be able to run in a terminal like this. If you run your application, you will see a UI and you will be able to click around and do all kinds of crazy things. You can read more on this library here, but we will try to build a to-do list application. So the idea is that we have some user interface, and we have a field in which to put our text. And the text is going to be a to-do list item. We will have some add button. If you click on the add button, the item is going to be added, and you have the ability to toggle items and do all kinds of crazy things. It is basically a to-do list. Another thing I think would make this interesting is to also persist our data, so that if we close the application and start it again, the data that we had is going to be persisted. There are different ways to do this. You may store the information in a file, you may store the information in the cloud, but what I want to do here is to bring in an SQLite third-party dependency and use that to persist our data. So our data is going to be persisted in a database. We want to make that work. But we are not going to be combining those two things here. So I am going to first make this become an FTXUI based graphical user interface. And after that, I will bring in SQLite and try to see what comes up here. That's the plan we have. So we need to describe what we want to the agent here. Make sure you have agent selected and you are using a model that you have access to. You can use any of these models really, but I prefer to use Claude Sonnet because it gives me the best results from what I have done with this thing here. So I am going to bring in my context. My context is going to be the code base. So it is going to take all the files in my project here and use them to decide what it is going to do for me. And I will tell it I want to change this application to be a to-do list. Okay, this is my request here. I want to change the application to be a to-do list application. The UI is going to be using FTXUI, so I should fix this typo here. You will bring in the third-party dependency and link against it, and change the main file to set up a to-do list interface. We will have a field on top where we type our data, a button to add a new item, a button to toggle, and a button to delete an item. Completed tasks should be in green, and those not completed should be in red. And I will also tell it to build the application and make sure that everything it gave me compiles. Okay, so this is my prompt. And sometimes I want to save these prompts because sometimes things don't work and I may need to reuse them. So I will bring a text file like this and paste it in and just put it away in case I need it. Then I am going to pass this through this thing here. I will give it a moment. So it is going to go to work and try to give me what I just described here. Let's wait and see what comes up. You see it is doing some work here. I'll help you transform this into a to-do list application using FTXUI. This is where you make sure that it understood your requirements. And if it didn't understand them, you can come down here and stop it. So you can come down here and stop it and give the instructions again. These are things you can do. But here you see that it is doing the work. It is going to first update the VC package file to add FTXUI. You see it has already done that. And it's going to create the main application with a to-do list interface. Let me start by searching. It is going to do what it needs to do. And it is going to update the CMake list.txt file. So this is basically going to find the FTXUI package and link against it. And again, I am going to stress that you really need to know your language before you use these things here. If things go wrong, you want to know which directions to tune things in. So you should be knowledgeable in C++ before you do these kinds of things here. Or in general, you should be knowledgeable in the language or the technology that you are using with these AI tools here. Otherwise, you are just going to be going blind and things are going to go wrong. So it's done its work. Now it wants to configure the project. It is going to be selecting the preset. So I think this is okay. I am going to tell it to go. And let's see what comes out. It seems that the configuration was good. Now it is going to ask me if it can build the project. Let's give it a chance to do that. You see, it wants to build the project. This is the command to build using our build configuration here. So let's continue and we will see if all is well. It seems that the build was good. So it is going to tell me that all is good and I can try this application here. I am going to decrease the size here because this is ridiculous. So it says, an input field at the top for entering new tasks. An add button was added. Each to-do list items shows a checkbox to toggle completion. This is really good. The task text and a delete button to remove the item. You can now run the application, but I don't see the option to toggle. Oh, to toggle completion, this is the checkbox that we use here. So run the application. And if we run it, it is going to complain. So I am going to abort. Let's see if it can figure out that something went wrong here. I just closed that terminal. And we will see what comes out here. If you want, you can look at what it did in the main file. So let's go to source and open our main file. This is what it has done for us here. It has noticed that we had an exception, so it's going to try and redo the thing. And this is what I don't like about this tool. It is going to completely change things here. So let me fix the issue. And fixing the issue is basically rewriting the entire thing, which I don't like that much. But let's give it a chance and see what comes out. Okay, the build seems to be good. So let's see what it comes up with. It should give me the prompt to let it run the application. I will let it run. And now we have a field in which we can type. So let's say walk the dog or wash the clothes. And if I hit add, the thing is going to be added. This seems promising. So let's say fetch water. Okay, and I am going to add. You see, I can fetch water and I can toggle completion. You see, this seems to be really good. And I can delete a task. This is really good. I think this is what we asked for. And it is really good. So let's close the application and see what it says. It should say that everything is all right now. And another thing I should stress is that you should try to do things in steps. And try to not do everything in one bulk prompt. Because then chances are going to be that a lot is going to be wrong. So when you give it a vague prompt, it is going to have the ability to go in thousands of directions, and you don't really want that. So now we have a UI that we like. After we have it, we will, why is it still running? Let's show the terminal window. So let's go to view terminal, and we can close this. I am going to stop it because I already have something I like, and I am going to hit F7 to build on my own to see if everything is good. I can even open a terminal window, so let's go there. So we can bring up the terminal window here in Visual Studio Code and say build X and say debug. I think this is where the thing is. And the application is named cpp project.exe. So I can type a task, fetch water. Okay, and add a task. I can say that this has been completed. Okay, I like it. I can add another one. So wash dishes. Okay, let's type this here and we add. And I can say that this is also completed. I can delete a task. I think I like this. This is a good design. Now that I like it, I am going to say that I want to keep it. So let's keep this. So keep. And after we keep, the changes are going to be basically stored in our source code here. And I can try to build again to make sure that everything is all right. Now we have a fatal error and it cannot open the executable because it is already running somewhere. So where is it running? Let's bring up our terminal. Yeah, it is still running here. So I am going to hit Control C and close it and then build again. Make sure that everything is all right. And now we are sure that we like these changes here. I can even say that we are done. So what I want to do is to come back to our Git interface and add these changes to Git and make this our last good working state. I can't stress how important this is. Another thing you can do is what changes it did. So for example, from what we had before, we just added FTXUI. So this was removed and this was added in the VC package JSON file. So now we have two dependencies. We had one, but now we have two. Let's go in the CMake list.txt file and see what it did. We can even close all this here. So in the CMake list.txt file, this was changed. So find required packages. It is going to try and find FMT and FTXUI, and it is going to link against this library here. This is basically what it did. We found FTXUI, and now we are linking against that, as you see here. And we are going to be linking that into our executable that we are creating through this command here. This is the set of changes we did in the CMake file. If we go in main, this is where most of the work happened. And you see that things are set up in a way that gets things to work here. For example, you can see we added FTXUI, we brought in the namespace, we created a to-do item as a class. And in main, we set up everything. This is really not a complex application, but it is good enough to show what is going on here. You can see how they are modeling the delete button, which is really cool. It is just this icon that we have here, and it is going to show up. And this is really good. Now that we have this, we can add this and make this our last working state so that if things go wrong, we can come back to this state here. So I am going to stage these changes. And another thing you can do using these agents here in Visual Studio Code is to let it even generate your commit message, which is really cool. So we can click on this button here at the top, and it is going to generate the commit message, which I like to do a lot. So let's see what it does. And it is going to say add FTXUI dependency and implement basic to-do list functionality. This is what we did. So I am going to commit this. And now you can see the new change that we did here. And this is really cool. Now that we have this, we can do the last thing we wanted to do. Now, the next thing we want to do is to persist the data using SQLite. So I am going to describe what I want again. So let's come down here and add my code base as context. And I am going to say, add the feature to persist data using SQLite. When the app is started, the data should be automatically loaded. And when the data changes, the changes should be written to the database. I think this is descriptive enough. So I am going to pass this here. Make sure that you have context. So we have the code base, the entire code that we have in our project here. And I am going to pass this command here. So I am using Claude Sonnet, and I will see what comes out here. Let's give it a chance to do what it needs to do. It is probably going to modify the VC package file. It is going to modify the CMake file here. And it is going to change things in the main file and probably add another file for database handling. Let's see what it's going to do. So I'll help you add SQLite persistent to your C++ application. And what we need to do is add SQLite as a dependency, create a database handler class, and add the functionality to load and save data automatically. This seems like what we need to do. So it is going to do what it needs to do here. It is going to create a to-do database header file. We will also set up a CPP file, and we will bring everything together in the main file. I think that's what it is going to do. And you can see that as it does these changes, Git is going to be tracking what changed. And anytime things go wrong, we can come back here and discard all these changes here. We have this safety in using Git. The last state we had, things working with a good user interface, is just stored here. This is really cool. So let's give this a moment to do what it needs to do. I am going to decrease the size so that we can look at this better. And give this a moment. Okay, you see it has done some work here. I was busy with something else, but now I am back. So it even found that it had a few errors, and it fixed them in by adding the missing include files and everything. So it is updating the to-do database CPP file. Let's let it do what it needs to do. Again, we have the safety in that if things go wrong, we can come back to the last working state here. This is really cool. So let's let it do what it needs to do. But we can see what it's doing here. For example, we can look at the CMake list.txt file and notice that, or we can even start by the VC package file. So did you not modify the VC package file? You should have modified it. You should have modified it. So let's look and see what it does. It did not. You need to do that. It's going to run into errors, but let's let it finish. That's why it is running into these errors. And I am going to stop it and tell it that it needs to add the SQLite dependency to the VC package file. Okay, and again, this stresses that you need to understand what is going on to get these AI agents to do what you want to do. If you don't understand what is going on, for example, you can't notice that it has missed this important detail here. Make sure you know what is happening. You need to already be a developer to take advantage of these tools here. I see some people say, oh, I am not a developer. I don't need to learn programming or anything. I can tell these agents to do work for me. If things go wrong, then you won't know what is going wrong, and that's a bad thing here. Let's see what is happening here. So it has added SQLite. Let's continue and see if this is going to work. We need to try it. And if things go wrong, we will try to fix them. You see that it has already faced a problem. So let's see what it does about this. I see there is an error in finding SQLite. The issue is in the CMake package name. So it is going to try and change the CMake list file, and it wants to configure again. So, it seems that we have configured the project. You can see that the build files have been generated. Now it is going to say, great, configuration was good. Now let's create the necessary files for SQLite persistence. It is going to go in and create these classes to make everything work. Let's give it a moment to see if all goes well here. Okay, it has done all it needs to do. I see that it has created a lot of files in here. So headers and CPP files, let's try to configure. We will give it the chance to do that, and we have a problem. So with FTXUI, it's going to have a bunch of problems with lambdas with FTXUI here. Let's see if it can fix them. We will give it that chance here. It has done its work. Now we want to configure and see if all is well. And it has configured. We still have problems, but we will give it a chance to redeem itself. And you can see that everything is running in a command or a terminal named Copilot here, because this was created to run commands from Copilot. So we still have the problem with FTXUI here. And this is what I don't like. If it starts modifying a lot about FTXUI, we will lose the features that we had before. That's my experience here. So we have to be careful in accepting these changes here. But again, we have a safety line here. If we don't like what is going on, we can revert to what we had before. I am going to let it configure. Again, we have these problems, and it is going to keep looping around. So it notices that we still have issues with FTXUI. I am going to give it this chance. If it keeps failing, I am going to stop it and tell it to try other approaches, but still give us the features that we had in our user interface here. So let's continue, and here we still have problems. So I am going to stop it and tell it, I see that you are struggling with FTXUI lambdas, and I need you to fix this once for all and keep the UI. Okay, we are going to try and be mean here. We don't have all the time in the world, so I am going to tell it to try again. Sometimes this is going to nudge it in the right direction and make it give you things, let me fix FTXUI Lambda issues quickly. You see that it has noticed that we're not happy with the performance that it had. And maybe this is going to get it to give us what we want here. It's going to be a little more careful, if I can say it like that. I don't know how it finds these compiler errors without running the things through the compiler. You see, it says, I see there are compilation errors mainly due to missing include files. How does it find that? Maybe it is using some static analysis to figure out things that could go wrong. But this is really cool. It can find out problems even before we run the code through the compiler. And again, this may take your time because you do a lot of iteration on what you want to do. And sometimes I do this for across a bunch of days. If I have some time to kill and I have an idea that I want to play with, I can do this. Once I have something I like, I will put it in my Git history. Then tomorrow when I have time, I will try to iterate again. This may be something you do over a long period of time, unless this is the main project you are working on from morning to evening. Then things are going to be faster. But I usually do these in my spare time. Okay, so what is it doing? I see that it is just searching and doing all kinds of crazy things here. Maybe that's because I was mean to it here, saying it that we don't have all the time in the world. So let's see what this does. And as it changes file, you will see changes here. Sometimes if we change the VC package file or the CMake file, Visual Studio Code is going to automatically reconfigure the project and you will see things happening here. So let's see what is going on. It wants to clear everything I have and rebuild again. This is what this command here is going to do. So let's see what happens. PowerShell did not like this command. So it is going to try and change into the directory and then it is going to run the command. This is what it is doing here. I think I should increase the size here and close the list of files that I have so that we have these two views here. So it's going to try and configure the project and the configuration is going to fail again. So FTXUI component base has problems. Let's see what it does. Again, if you want to use FTXUI in something serious in your projects, you should really invest the time in learning it so that you can go down and try to fix these problems. You should be able to fix these things on your own if you invest the time in doing that. That's the best way to go about using these agents here. But I like to use this for prototyping or trying out ideas because it saves me a lot of time. This is usually something I would offload to my junior or anything, but I have the ability to do this on my own without having to need to offload this to someone else. So it can see that I have been doing this for some time. I am going to give it a chance to try and do this again. So let's see what's happening. We still have issues with FTXUI. So what are you doing? You can see that there are errors related to this, but now you have stopped. Yeah, it knows that it's been doing this for a while. It was thinking it's going to try and do something else, I guess. And again, it is going to modify the entire file, which is crazy. So let's see what comes up. Getting FTXUI to work was a bit easy, but now we are trying to combine this with the SQLite database to persist data. And some things need to change in our user interface. That's why we are changing a lot of things in the main file here. So let's verify that there are any remaining errors after fixing the button component. So what happens, it changes one thing and that one thing is going to trigger thousands of other errors. This is the process you have to go through if you need to use these things here. Okay, it says it may need to delete the build folder and reconfigure everything. So I am going to tell it to do that. Again, this command is not going to work because this is Linux specific. It needs to change into the directory and do things using PowerShell because I'm on Windows here. Okay, so it's going to cd into there and it's going to come up with a command to delete the build folder. I think that's what it is going to do. Okay, let's reconfigure and we have errors here. This is a PowerShell error. I think this is going to be sorted out. The problems we don't want are those coming from our code here. It seems now that the build is good. Okay, it's going to say that the build was good. Now we get to try what it gave us to make sure that we can persist the data. Okay, so it seems that we have the thing here. Now we can go into our project and let's go into our code and just open any file and hit F7 here to try to build the project on our own. Now we have the binary. We can open the terminal and go to the location of our project. So I am going to clear and say build and say X and say debug and say CPP, that's the binary. If we run it, it is going to give us our user interface. You can even see that we have the DB file in our project here. So if we type, we are going to have the data. Let's say wash car. If we add, the task is going to be there. It's not going to be completed. And let's close the application and do Control-C to kill the application. If we run it again, we should see the data loaded, and you see that wash car is here. It seems that it is working. I am going to toggle it and make it completed and close the application. Okay, and if I run the application again, it should show it as completed. It seems that we have everything we wanted. And this is really cool. We did this using this AI agent, and we didn't have to really do a lot of thinking. All we needed was to know what we want. And one piece of advice I would give you is that you should try to break things into different steps. For example, if you told it, I want SQLite and I want FTXUI in one go, then you lose the chance to decide what you want the user interface to look like. It is really important to break things into priorities, decide what you want to do first, make sure you have that. After you have that, you push that into GitHub or Git, and then on top of that, you start iterating, getting the things that you want. I think that's the best way to get good results out of these agents here. This is all we had to do. So now that we have this, we are going to add this to our Git repository. You see, we even have a database file that we want to ignore because we don't want to push this to GitHub. So I am going to say that I am done. But I will tell it to add the database file to the git ignore file here. We don't want that in our project. So I am going to give it the context and of the project and say add the DB file to git ignore. And I will give it a second. So it's going to change the git ignore file and add that. And you can see that it has added database files. So what does it, since you already have some changes in your working directory, you want to make sure Git starts tracking this change to git ignore. Let me run a git command to show you the current status. So let's do that. This is not harmful. So it is going to do that. From the git status, I can see that the git ignore has been modified. Let me commit this change to make sure that the DB files are ignored going forward. So it is going to do that for me. I can even do that myself, but why not let it do that for me? And this is going to fail. And I see the command failed because the AND operator is not accepted. So let's say git add git ignore, and it is going to commit this. Okay, so if it commits this, you will see that it is going to go. And we have this message here. It's doing a lot for us, and this is really cool. Now we can see things without the DB file that we had before. I am going to keep these changes here, and I am going to add everything to my staging area. So let's do that. I can go to the top here and hit the plus button. Things have been added to the staging area, and I can generate a commit message by clicking the button there and implement to do database functionality with SQLite integration. This is what we did. I am going to commit this, and if I wanted, I would publish this into a remote repository, but I don't need to do that. The goal was to show you that you can build something really cool using these AI agents in Visual Studio Code using Claude Sonnet as we did here. And we have a slightly intermediate project that we can use to do all kinds of crazy things. For example, now if we need another dependency, we can add it here. We can do all kinds of crazy things. This is all I had to share in this video. I hope you found it useful. I am stopping here, and I will see you next time.